Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of This Week in Crypto Philanthropy. My name is Nick Mikhalevsky, Senior Sales Manager here at The Giving Block. Solo today, my colleague Pietro Moran is out on assignment. He is out at an industry event, so it's just going to be me this week. So we'll have a little bit of an abridged show. So why don't we kick right in? In terms of the things that we'll talk about today, we will go through a crypto price check as usual, see where the markets are. We'll recap some major gifts that we saw over the past week. We'll go through some fundraising tips as usual, and then we'll wrap up with a few crypto news items. And again, some really timely updates. We feel like we've got almost like a crystal ball going on right now, but some great updates to kind of end with in the industry as well. Want to remind you guys that there is still, for a limited time, $500 in Bitcoin when you get started with the Giving Block. So grab your phone, scan that QR code, set up a meeting. We'll walk you through everything. So a nice little way to jumpstart your journey with us. So with that, why don't we take a look at what's going on in the crypto markets today? If you take a look at Bitcoin, retraced a little bit from that 70,000 mark that it was last week, but still remaining pretty strong, bouncing around between $67,000, $68,000. Ethereum was really the news story of last week, and it's been on a bit of an appreciation. The news story will talk about the Ethereum ETFs that received regulatory approval last week. And that is why we're seeing that appreciate as well. And those are, kind of a couple points that we'll want to keep an eye on, especially as these ETF approvals continue to play out. It'll have some interesting repercussions for the wider crypto markets in general. So definitely something to keep an eye on. We'll touch on that in a second. But with that, why don't we go ahead and move on to the major gifts of the past week, which were phenomenal. So it's another multi six-figure week for donations coming in, and wanted to highlight a couple things. So again, we're still seeing those transformative gifts come through, and actually wanted to highlight, even though this is crypto philanthropy that we're mostly talking about on this show, last week's fundraising tip was all about optimizing your donations for stock and optimizing that giving experience. And almost, like clockwork, here we have a $250,000 stock donation that came in to a faith-based organization. So again, the proof is right there in the pudding. It's fantastic to see that. Again, another $100,000 in crypto to a youth organization. So again, these major gifts are, showing no signs of slowing down. And for those organizations that again are so focused on year end, finding a way to work this into your, fundraising experiences throughout the year can yield some pretty incredible results. So again, work crypto into those fundraising strategies throughout the year, not just at year end. Some other major gifts that we're seeing across the spectrum, you can see on the right side of the screen, a handful of 20,000 plus donations, and on down the list, 13,000 to another food organization and stock as well. So again, I'm sure we'll see more and more of these automated stock and donor advised fund gifts come in along with crypto. And again, we could show you how to position those very nicely along with crypto and how to optimize those giving pages. So an awesome to see all the donations and all the major gifts that we've been seeing coming in this week. This isn't all of them, just wanted to grab a subset of some of them. But definitely great to see. So let's move on now to some fundraising tips and kind of the tip of the week. And today's theme, again, seeing all these great gifts come in, I wanted to pick optimized giving pages, something that we help all of our nonprofit clients with. What you'll see on the left side of the screen is a snapshot from our knowledge base, which when you join the Giving Block, you're not just getting a tool, you're not just getting a product that allows you to accept crypto and stock and donor advised fund gifts, but you also get access to our knowledge base and access to our experts. And so this is a snapshot of our knowledge base going into the search engine optimized way to build your crypto giving page. So again, all the do's and the don'ts and the strategies, here are the attributes of a really effective crypto giving page. This is again why we've been the category king of crypto philanthropy. We know all the tools and the tricks of how to really stand out and engage with crypto donors. On the right side of the page, I want to put some examples of some really great pages that we've highlighted, really great nonprofits that have some very effective crypto giving pages and are using all of the tools that we've and the tips and the suggestions that we give you to really optimize those pages and make them easily discoverable by donors. So check out all of these on the right. There's some great examples. Some of these also have great stock and donor advised fund pages as well. So definitely check these out. And with that, we'll move on to the crypto news updates of the week. 3 top industry news stories that I wanted to highlight. Obviously, the biggest one of last week was the Ethereum exchange traded funds receiving regulatory approval by the SEC. Just like we had the Bitcoin ETFs launch in January of 2024, we now have the Ethereum ETFs coming to market soon. They're not trading yet. There's still a few more regulatory filings that need to happen before they can actually go live. But that, of course, is going to open even more of the traditional investor ecosystem into the second largest cryptocurrency, Ethereum. So really excited to see that. I would predict that now that we have Bitcoin ETFs and ETH ETFs, we might actually get to see some other diversified crypto ETFs, maybe. We'll see, but of course, that is only going to make things that much closely intertwined with the traditional investing space. Point 2, Semler Scientific, which is probably an unknown name. It was an unknown name to me as well, but it's a NASDAQ-listed healthcare company that's taking their treasury and putting some of that into Bitcoin. And this is something that I think we will see more and more companies do. The long and short of it is when companies are sitting on so much cash, Bitcoin has been seen as a great inflation hedge, or if you're in an international location, maybe a good hedge against devaluation. So again, the basic premise here is we're sitting on all this cash, and rather than watching it get inflated away, we should put it into a store of value. And Semler Scientific put out a memo about it. They see it as a better store of value than gold. So why don't we have our money work for us? Because traditionally we could put this into treasuries that might be earning 5%, 5.5%. But when you add inflation on top of that, there's not really much of a return there. Why don't we put some of this into Bitcoin? And again, 157% return in Bitcoin last year. That's really a way to put your money to work. And it'd be really interesting to see how this investment thesis plays out in the corporate space. And as you can see on the right side of the screen, when they made that announcement, you could see what happened to the stock. Doesn't mean that that's going to, something that's going to carry around forever, but a really interesting development. And again, the point here is as more and more of these corporates invest into Bitcoin, again, if you're a holder of Bitcoin, it'll be interesting to see how much of that appreciation continues. And of course, the reason why we're telling you this is that if you've got appreciated assets that are going to continue to rise and rise and rise, it could lead to more giving, just like we saw on some of the previous slides. And lastly, to close out, MasterCard has just launched their crypto credential. It's something that's only available right now in Latin America and Europe. But what that means is it's a little bit of a vague name. Rather than needing to interact with very complex, long cryptocurrency addresses, they've come up with a way to use a username. So think of like, Venmo, for example, and how you have just sort of like a username, like I want to Venmo Chris or I want to Venmo Ann, right? Right now, there's a very long, complicated cryptocurrency address. They've come up with a way that now replaces that to an extent so that you can just interact with people by a credential, by a username, rather than needing this very long, complicated address. Now, it's really cool because it still does all the the regular checks behind the scenes, but for remittances and moving money cross border, it's a much easier and user-friendly way to interact in sort of like the front end. So I can send my money to my family overseas in a much more user-friendly way, just like how it was easy to PayPal and Venmo, really easy to interact and send money between people using like their username versus, hey, give me your bank account number and let me wire you some money. So really interesting to see how this will play out. It's a really cool development that just hit the wires today. So a little bit of breaking news, but it's going to be really interesting to see how these 3 play out over the weeks and months. But that's going to wrap it up for today's shorter episode of This Week in Crypto Philanthropy while Pietro's out. Send us some questions if you want to learn more about some of the donations that we're seeing, if you want to ask us some more questions, if you want to set up a meeting, if you want to take advantage of that $500 Bitcoin promo to get started with the giving block, we'll answer all your questions. And most importantly, we'll get you set up for this year's year-end giving, which we think could be one of the biggest of all time. So in June and July, now's a great time when things are slow to really beef up your capabilities for the year-end giving season. We're here. Just reach out to us in the show notes. So on behalf of Pietro and the rest of the Giving Block team, thanks for joining this week's episode, and we'll see you next week.